Oh, but it was interesting, like when I first got my car, it showed me a lot of sand.
All right, you folks ready? It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get the meeting going here. All right, thank you. Thank you folks for coming. This is our second workshop tonight. I know the rain has probably kept many people away. We had at least twice as many people last time. So I do appreciate you taking the time and coming despite the weather. Just some quick housekeeping. The restrooms, women are down this hallway and men over down this way. It's like a horseshoe. So tonight we're going to basically do a recap of what happened at the last meeting. Then we're going to talk about the design survey results, talk about some of the new concepts. And then we were going to break out into groups, but it looks like we can probably do one group and maybe we'll move into the conference room for that. Unless, we'll see how it works. But yeah, if more people come, we will. But it's also kind of nice to be able to hear what everyone's thinking. So if we can keep it in one group, we'll do that. My name's JP Harries. I'm the planner here at the City of Cotati. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Robin, who is the project proponent.
Thank you again for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it, given that it's been quite a deluge today. A couple other just quick housekeeping. If you didn't get a box dinner, please do grab one, bring one home. I have enough for everybody to have and then some. And then number two, please do sign in the sign-in sheet. Now there's going to be 6 people on the sign-in sheet and there's 9 people here. So we're missing a few. Please do sign in on the sign-in sheet. When you put your email address, please write very clearly. When I sent notices out to the people who attended last, the September meeting from their email address, I think all but one bounced back to me. And there's only so long I can spend trying to figure out if it's a T or an F or an R or whatever. So anyway, if you just write that part pretty clearly, that would be great. Most of you look familiar to me. Can you just quickly raise your hand if you were here at the meeting in September? Okay, so I know you were Sam. In our presentation, I included a recap of our last meeting just because sometimes when we have a series of meetings like these, new people show up and I don't want them to miss out on the information that was presented the meeting before. But since most of you were here last time, I'm going to keep the recap very brief. And then those of you who were not here, if you have other questions, you should feel free to come up to me and ask me questions after the presentation while we're in the breakout group if you want. If you can go ahead to the next slide. You can go ahead to the next slide. Okay. Yep, that's fine. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So just real quickly, as we mentioned at the last meeting, my company, Freebird Development, was selected from a competitive process that the city used, a request for proposals process for the site. We were selected by the city council, approved that developer selection in June, and then we entered our exclusive negotiated agreement in July. We started our engagement in September just because we find engagement to be more effective not during the summer. And so we are currently in our second community engagement meeting, and at the end of the presentation, we'll talk about what's to come in terms of engagement. Next slide. I did want to reintroduce our development team. Again, I am Robin. Carmen is not here tonight, but she is a housing specialist with North Bay Regional Center. This project does propose to have a set aside of units for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and the North Bay Regional Center is our partner with that population. The 3 gentlemen on this slide are all sitting there. Paul, raise your hand. Sam, raise your hand. Don, raise your hand. Great. Next slide. So again, real briefly on the development program goals. Like we talked about last week, we were trying to leverage the location of the site to help the city meet its arena numbers. So I think the prior proposal on the site had about 27, 29 units, and then there was one that was like a 70 unit proposal for the project. Huh? The 5-story one was like 70 units though, that one, the one that sparked the city to buy the site. So we're trying to have a compromise here where we can get the city some of the affordable, help them reach their affordable housing goals while also not being unrealistic in the number of units that can be supported on the site. We were aiming for approximately 50 units. The proposals you see, or the plans you see here tonight have 44 units. Serving a broad range of incomes from 60% of it, or sorry, 44 apartment units, yeah. Yeah. Serving a broad range of household sizes and incomes. So in our project, what you'll see here tonight has a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. It's a pretty much an even split between those unit sizes. So again, it's not all studios and 1 bedrooms. It's family housing with some 2 bedrooms and 3 bedroom units as well. It is all affordable housing. I do have some slides at the end of this that show you what that means in terms of rents and incomes. Again, as I mentioned, 25% set aside for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. For people who may not be familiar with that population, it's, for example, autism, Down syndrome, I don't know why, cerebral palsy. It's also people with, there are people who have been screened to be able to determine that they can live independently. So they may have a caregiver there during the day at some point, but a lot of the people who live in the building, and this is my 3rd building now I've done with for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They mostly work a lot. And my other projects work at Safeway, restocking shelves, et cetera. So they can live independently. They primarily, they don't drive. They don't have any overnight parking needs. So it also helps with a tight site like this, where I know parking is going to be a big concern in the community. So anyway, and then our last development program goal is just to be a good neighbor through both community engagement and making sure that we have an ongoing discourse from pre-development through construction and operations, and then also in our design. Okay, next slide. Some of the key design goals, and I'm going to hand this over to Paul in a little bit to talk through the plans that we have here tonight. But we wanted to limit the height to 3 stories. Again, I believe some of the prior development proposals for the site were 3 stories. Some were as high as 5 stories. So we're limiting it to 3 stories. But we also want to relate and transition to our surrounding context. So what you'll see from Paul in a little bit is that it's primarily 3 stories, but we are stepping down to our neighbors to 2 stories. And then a lot of the building is only 1 story, where we have a parking garage with our podium courtyard on top. Activate the public streets with a lobby and commercial space. So again, when we get into our breakout group and we can get into the site plan a little bit more, you'll see all along East Cotati Avenue and La Plaza, and wrapping onto Charles also is lobby, retail use, active uses. Ensure security through a single point of entry. We have 1 lobby. There'll also actually be entry through the park. People entry, people entry. And this is to the residential. Obviously, the retail has its own entry, but in our residential building, we have 1 main entrance that people come through, and so the property manager can see who's coming in and out of the building lobby. Incorporating indoor and outdoor community spaces, providing adequate amount of parking, and designing the project to be environmentally conscious. So I think if you go to next slide. Oh yeah, I'm going to talk real quickly about the survey results. So all of you who were here last meeting know that we did a survey where we show a few different examples of projects and types of architecture and said, what do you like? What don't you like? And, you know, sometimes the survey results for us are very surprising. Sometimes we go into a community and think we know what people want, and we didn't. In this case, there weren't too many surprises, to be quite honest. If you go to the next page, next slide. These were the three ones that got the most likes, and they're all kind of a mix between a mission style and a craftsman style. So that's what we've really focused on in the renderings that we're going to present tonight. And is also consistent, I should say, with the downtown specific plan and the planning documents that we've reviewed for this area. If you go to the next slide, these were the dislikes. In our survey, we had included some, a little bit more contemporary, not too crazy, but a little bit more contemporary, and those were dislikes. And also Victorian was a dislike. So again, not entirely surprising survey results. Like I said, we like to do these surveys anyway, because in one of the communities I worked with HKIT, we went in with like, this is Monroe, Paul. I don't know if you remember, our original plan was like craftsman, and everybody was like, we don't like that. And they wanted something more contemporary, and we ended up going more contemporary on that one. So again, we have stuck with craftsman and mission kind of design vernacular. I try to use that word whenever I can on this project. Next slide. I think I'm now about to turn it over to Paul to talk through the design concepts that we will be sharing and talking to you about tonight. He can walk.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, do we have the images on the slides? Because these are really teeny tiny here. And we do. Are we going to do the plan first? Oh, okay. Yeah, if we could.
Go forward. We're going to have you come back.
Sorry about that. Okay. So to orient folks, this is our first level plan. And we spent a lot of time thinking about the corners. Really the most prominent parts of the site are going to be the corners that are facing the plaza, obviously, and then the sharp corner that faces off towards the northeast. Looking at the, okay, swallow this thing. Looking at the existing downtown retail, which is around the corner, going on Old Highway, we really wanted to emphasize the walkable character of that downtown. So people coming on foot down the main street would be able to come down to the plaza, turn, and then there's more retail there. So the idea is there's some synergy because you have a shop. That's the idea of the shops. You can easily walk to that corner. Some of the renderings you'll see here, you know, it's quite a prominent corner, so it's a good location for retail. We'd like to take advantage of that to not only provide a corner and some retail space, but really also to create a significant building that will define the plaza, that feels like it's really a part of the plaza. So the orange part on the ground floor is all proposed as retail shell space. In the middle of the block on Cotati, we're looking at a potential location for the entrance to the garage, which likely will be a one-way in, one-way out because of the configuration of the street. That's off of East Cotati. And there is a traffic study that's underway, so we're still getting information about that. But we've identified that location plus the location on Charles. You'll see there's another garage there. I think there's a number 3 on there as another potential entrance for the garage. I don't have a pointer. It's the 3 on that corner there. I could point to this. Yeah, it's, if you can imagine that would be the location there. What you're seeing in green, just in terms of the first floor, it covers almost the entire site. But we are holding the building back against neighboring properties. We're going to have a landscaped buffer there. It's about 10 feet wide. And the other corner, as I mentioned, is the retail, or is the residential lobby. We're going to have one point of entrance, a main door, The elevator and the stairs for the residents' access, plus the management offices will all be down in this corner. We tried to put as many of the active uses on the street as possible, not to make a nice street face, but also to provide some security and some supervision for that level.
So you say traffic is in and out of Mercy Society, you're not using La Plaza?
No. No, we just propose mid-block, potentially at Cotati, or as far away from the intersection on Charles as possible. The safest place for these entrances is as far as possible from intersections. So those seem like the two best candidates for the garage access. Any other questions on the first floor?
You know, what the retail shops, roughly?
The honest answer is no. We've tried to design the space pretty flexibly. The one retail space, 750 square feet, that one would just be one space, but then the 3,100, that could be demised in different ways if we have set shops.
How many you?
Yeah, how much square footage do you have?
Well, so in terms of the retail square footage, so there's the 750 square feet down here. And then this is 3,100 square feet, and we provided 2 doors. So this would be its own space, and this could potentially be 1 or 2. If for some reason we had someone wanting even smaller, we could consider, adding a third door and demising this into 3 spaces. But my guess is it'll be two spaces here and 1 space there.
So people can park on La Plaza, go shopping.
People could park on La Plaza to go shopping, or we also envision having parking within our garage for the retail. So it's kind of hard to see in when we're in a smaller group. We can go over it in more detail. But again, cars could come in here or here, and then these spots over here that's closest to the retail would be, yeah. Yeah, but these spots here could also be for the retail. We've included a door here, so people who could park inside the garage here and access the retail through this little corridor there.
Any questions on the first floor plan?
It's a quick question on Charles Street on the side where the post facility is. Will there be a sidewalk? Will there be parking on that side of Charles Street as there is on the opposite side? Or no?
I believe it's not angled parking, yeah.
There now, but there could be.
Angle parking on the street?
Yeah, just regular street parking along the, yeah.
Well, we have it on one side of the street, the other side is kind of unofficial there from the stand. Oh, we find a big stand.
Yeah, fill that in. I think we can go on to the next slide.
The parking garage, is that gonna be 1 story or 2?
1.
No. And then if you'll go back,
Mhm.
the green around the property, that's 10 foot wide
Yes.
of trees, bushes, grass.
It's probably going to be, yeah, it's going to be ground cover. We're going to have some trees up on the podium, but likely we're going to have a mostly ground cover and grasses and that sort of thing in there.
Right, podium.
Yeah, the podium. So this is a garage. It's a structured garage. It's an indoor garage, and it's built within a concrete structure. And on top, it was what we call the podium. So there's space on the top of the garage that we're going to landscape and put in play areas and whatnot. We'll take a look at that in a second. So we can utilize that space on top of the residence open space. Exactly. Yeah. It's rooftop to the garage, but it's only on the first floor, so the building is taller than that. Yeah, actually, we can go to the second floor. We show our podium. Yeah. So what we're calling the podium is this area that's all here in gray. The building itself wraps around, as you can see, on the perimeter with the orange pieces. we envision a shared room, a common room that's in one of these two courtyards that are created, a player with various equipment in the other side of the podium. And there'll be a surrounding railing, fence and planting, and there'll be planting and whatnot on top of the podium.
The courtyard play area will not just be gray asphalt, as it looks like, or gray concrete, as it looks like right now. It'll be very well landscaped, and at our next community meeting, we'll have plans that show, but it's play equipment, seating areas, landscaping. It's green, not gray.
Yeah.
So, but it will be from the southwest.
Correct. Yeah, it'll have good orientation from the sun for the morning and not in the afternoon. But yeah, this is, as Robin's saying, this is mostly a placeholder. We're going to have a pretty robust landscaping and furniture and whatnot on this terrace here. Yeah, and the rest of the apartments, as Robin mentioned, there's a mixture of unit types. And we really work to give all the units air and light and connection to the open space. Next slide. And third floor is much of the same along the frontages in Charles and Cotati. But as Robin mentioned, we did step the building down at the ends to make that transition from the 3-story height down to the neighboring single-story residences.
Solar collectors on the roof.
Yes.
Not because we're great developers, even though we are great developers and would do it anyway, but it's code requirement right now for anything anything lower than 4 stories. So 3 and below, that 100% of your projected residential usage is covered through solar. Correct. Residential, not commercial, but residential will be the lion's share of the electrical usage on the project.
The 3-unit, 2-unit, 1-unit, or studios, how many of that, like 3 units are on the 3rd floor?
It's all interspersed. So the most efficient way to build is to stack units. So you'll see when we break down and you look at one closer, you'll see like usually a studio's on top of a studio on top of a studio. So that there's a mix of studios, 1s, 2s, and 3s on each floor.
Makes sense.
So, and again, that's just a very efficient way to build. So all of your plumbing lines are on top of each other and you're not having costly offsets.
Say which is that southwest, which is open homes. That way describing. So the podium you said was in first, second floor.
So, yeah, I think, and you can step in if I'm not doing a good job of describing. But if you look at this rendering, I think this one might show it the best. And Paul will share these renderings with you in a few minutes and kind of describe the differences between them, because there's 4 different options here. But this is La Plaza. So this is the 3-story bulk of the building is 3 stories. And then when we say it steps down to 2, if you can imagine, I think the photo framer is right there. So this is stepping down to 2 stories at the end. It does that similarly on Charles, even though we don't have a view of Charles yet. And if you can imagine in terms of the courtyard, just behind this building here, at the 1 story behind the building with the landscaping on top of that 1 story. So does that help visualize it? Oh, so the dotted lines there is just to show the purpose of those dotted lines, that it's 30 feet. Pete, I'll just call you out if that's okay, because it's your property. It's that dotted line shows that it is 30 feet from our shared property line with Pete until you get anything higher than 2 stories. Yeah, it's open to the sky from the First floor above, yes. Sorry, I know it's always, I think we get accustomed. I went to architecture school for 2 years. I was a dropout, from architecture school. I think we've been reading plans for a year. So it's always, when we come to the community meetings, it's always hard to translate, plans into words, I think. So feel free to keep asking questions if it's not, as obvious to you as it is to us, just because this is what we've been doing for 20 years.
Parking underground.
It's above ground. So if you can imagine, again, going back to this view here, the parking garage, this is retail, and then behind the retail is the parking garage. So if you look on this one, this door right there is an entrance to the parking garage. At some point, yes. I think we were, for this meeting, really focused on kind of honing in on a preference of mission versus craftsman. And then we can, further develop the building. But with having already 4 different options, I think we're trying to hone in on kind of, all right, this is what we feel like it might be best for this community. And then we can,
Sell us here.
Yeah.
On Charles Street.
yeah.
So, Robin, in respect to that point with Charles Street, if you, on that second, upper right-hand quadrant where you have the drop down the second story, if one visualize that would be a representation of what you've shown us on Charles Street there, would that be accurate?
Yeah, so on that corner as well, it would drop down to these 2 stories here.
Actually, just superimpose that at the lower section beyond the, I guess it would be the right, left-hand side, if you want, just reverse that.
Yes.
That would be would that be accurate to represent kind of what?
Yes,
You're looking at on the Charles Street side?
correct.
Yeah, it will be shorter like this side.
And what is the overall height on the roof height on the third story?
On the 3rd story, I don't
You're looking at 40, 50, what's the overall?
think it's like 35, 36 probably, or no, it's like 35, 36.
35 primarily in our data. 30, 40, something. We really wanted to break that. It's a very long building. So we made a lot of effort. Vision.
I was attempting to visualize that out my window, what I'll be seeing, that's all. So but what I'll be seeing apparently would be that, but of course, this is the street, there's the sidewalk itself will be established, so the actual base of the building will be, it's not going to be on the other side of the building, if you will, it will be further back still.
Correct. And just, if you look at this one here, can I borrow the? So where you see the white, that's 1 story. And again, where you see that, the 1 story has landscaping courtyard on top. So that's, the white is 1 story. The gray is 2 stories. The yellow orange is 3 stories.
So from the corner down 40, 50 feet
Sorry.
or so.
Do you want the ruler or the mic?
I want the mic. Just hold on one second. Because we're recording, I may want to give you the microphone so that we make sure we pick up the audio. Are you okay with this format with the questions, or would you rather go through the presentation and then take questions afterwards?
I think let's take like 2 more questions and then we can move forward with the presentation because we might be able to answer some of the questions.
All right, let's do that then. Go ahead, finish.
What was my question? So I was just attempting to visualize, from the corner of East Cotati coming down to that 2nd story, would that be approximately, I don't know, how many houses down from the corner if you were turning back looking at where I'm at? Does that make sense? Is that?
So our site
Can you speak up, please?
Yeah, we're about 3 houses down.
Gotcha, okay. That's what I figured. That's what it looks like.
Can you repeat it? 3 houses.
So the question had to do with the location of the site relative to the houses here. So we've got 1, 2, 3 houses across the street, and on the fourth, this is the edge of the site.
That's on Charles Street Road's driveway.
No, your driveway is down past the site. It's centered on Pete's property.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, other questions? Should we move into the good stuff? Okay. If we could go back in the slide presentation to the first images of building renderings. As Robin mentioned, we got a lot of feedback in the last meeting in terms of preference and what really resonates with you all here in Cotati. What we're showing today is not necessarily a finished design element. They look pretty developed, but they're just really character studies. Our goal is to get a sense of the character and the feel and what style resonates best with everyone here. And then we're going to develop that in more detail. And I think maybe renderings of Charles Street and more renderings of the building we can develop once we have this feedback and we have some direction from all of you. So as Robin mentioned, the styles, the vernaculars that we were looking at in particular, mission and craftsman, very common in California, obviously. So the mission style has a lot of the hallmarks of that style. So plaster, expression of mass, the arches, some depth at the windows, a combination of geometries that are inspired by mission architecture. This first image shows the main residential entrance. And this is facing the East Cotati side, and you can see that the lobby is not actually on the corner. It's set off the corner a little ways. We thought that was a better location because we could create a little bit of a plaza at the entrance and have some seating there and some cover in the rain. The rest of the frontage to the left of the entrance here would be space for the management offices. And typically during the day, if the offices are staffed, there'll be someone there keeping an eye out. And of course, the front entrance will be controlled with security as well. Moving further along towards the right, we start going down the street at East Cotati. So we've maintained the design on the street. We want to continue to use this arch shape and also incorporate some planting along the street. We're going to be incorporating that landscaping and the whole streetscape sidewalk to function as one. You also see some lighting here. There'll be signage and whatnot as we develop the design further. As we get to the far right, you'll see the potential garage opening mid-block at East Cotati. And can we go to the next slide? And so this is coming down the street and kind of around the corner. Now we're looking at this roughly from the middle of the plaza, and then the plaza on the right. You can see the existing bus stop, which should look familiar. We're envisioning that potentially staying in place, but that's something we're studying currently. As I mentioned, we wanted to make a prominent retail entrance on this location and a bit more of a monumental feel because of the scale of the building and the location it has on the plaza. But still using a mixture of different colors of plaster. We've also broken up the roof line, as you can see, to try to avoid a monolithic feeling building. And then as Robin mentioned, we did make an effort to step down on the ends so we could get a little bit more space and daylight for the adjacent property. So this, in addition to plaster, we might have some tiles, some decorative tiles, some base tile, potentially some wood accents and potentially some iron balconies as building elements. And likely clay tile roof if there's the roof areas that will appear. All right, next slide. Another variation of the same. We've just been looking at different treatments of the facade materials. This one actually used a little bit of wood siding in the recesses, a little bit of a difference there that provides some more contrast in the materials. Next slide. More of the same, similar treatment. Can we go to the next slide? This next option is what we're calling Craftsman. It's a loose interpretation of Craftsman. Yay, Craftsman. Historically, this has evolved from bungalows and single-story houses and whatnot. So applying that to an apartment, it takes a bit of an interpretation. So the elements we identify with Craftsman, there's a certain rusticity. There's all heavy use of siding material instead of plaster, sloped roofs, gable ends, and also trellises, wood detailing, that sort of thing. Again, same view, looking at the entrance area, lobby, covered lobby. There's an elevator off to the side and a tower. And then the rest of the facade really is an effort to nix the massing a bit and try to break up some of the size of elements. Next slide. Again, view from the plaza side. Similar idea to have a bigger gesture, have a really welcoming retail presence. And then again, to step down as we get towards our neighbor. So we have this style A and then style B, which is very similar. That's the next slide. The differences here is we looked at some additional detailing of the bracketing of the roof. We looked at different materials for the base. But again, these are all just ideas we've put together to give you a sense of character. I think the last slide is the last slide of renderings. And we would really like to get your feedback on these and see what resonates. We have comment cards, and we're gonna, what's that?
One more presentation.
Okay, Robin, presentation.
If you could, so we already went through this. So I just want to, I think this is the last slide, just about ongoing community engagement. And then after the slide, we'll take more questions, and we can, I don't know, JP, we can either go in the other room, we could do it here, whatever. Well, we can figure out what the best forum for having more in-depth discussion is. But in terms of community engagement, we had our introductory meeting September 18th. We're here back here again 2 months later. Obviously, we've put quite a bit of thought into the plans and the renderings. And so it took us, a couple months to put that together, share that with the city, get some of their very preliminary feedback, which we've incorporated some of that into these in particular. I think, JP had asked us to take a look at the using the gabled roofs instead of the shed roofs. So this is a gabled roof. This is a shed roof. Had also asked us to look at introducing a few more materials. So for example, we had originally just showed the city this version, which is mostly plaster. And so that's why we then started looking at additional materials, as Paul pointed out, with some siding and the recesses here to just give it a little bit more texture to the building. So yeah, that's why it's been 2 months. And then our next meeting, which I think is now confirmed, December 10th at 6 p.m. We'll be here at for a city council meeting. So we'll be back in this room, but at that point, the city council members will also be here because we want to make sure we're getting their feedback early and often as well. And that'll be informal. They're not going to be voting on anything. It's really here's what we've been doing since the last time you saw us and approved us as to enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement. And then I have not had a chance to get the materials for meeting 1 up on my website yet, but over the next couple weeks, I hope to get all the materials from that meeting 1 and this meeting up on my website so that I know, especially for people who live at Charles Village. I got the name right? Charles Street. I knew I was missing a word. Sorry about that. You can send the link to your other residents. I know there's a lot of interest over there. So I will get that. As soon as that's up, I'll let you know. And yeah, my contact information is there as well. So I think that is it. Next slide. I do have, actually, if you can go to the next one. Actually, even the next one. So a lot of people always ask, what is affordable housing? So even though it wasn't part of the formal presentation, like the last meeting, I do have statistics on like when we're talking about rents and incomes, what does that mean? So this chart we can just leave up there since we have the other pictures boards. So if people are interested in, what incomes qualify for housing, for this housing, and what would the rents look like. This is all based on 2024. So without getting too technical, HUD releases these figures every year. So they could go up, they could go down based on what HUD releases in the year that we're occupying the building. But they don't usually go too far up or down. Usually about 3% a year. So. Okay. Should I just take we can take a couple questions, or what do you think the best? Should we?
What do you want to try to accomplish in the break?
Well, so I definitely want to get people's feedback on the comment cards also, because it's always, we'll take notes, but it's always really good to have specific feedback on comment cards as well, because it's just easier for us for record keeping. But I would definitely want to get, well, number one, I want to answer questions that you guys have. And number two, I want to get feedback on what we've presented. And particularly, we really want to kind of hone in again on whether we're doing mission or craftsman so that we can further develop the renderings. So yeah. I mean, that's why the surveys were so helpful, is because like they were, physically I have them and I scan them in and I have a record forever of like, was able to easily tally them up. So I do think it would be helpful on a comment card to write, we prefer mission or we prefer craftsman, and what you do like about it, what you don't like about it, and anything other comments you might have. But I don't want that to replace having a conversation as well. So.
Which is, let's stay in.
Stay.
I think stay in one.
Okay, I think so. Yeah. The only thing is that we have extra boards, and I'm just wondering if maybe we should pass those boards around a little bit so people could see them.
Well, since table here, we can move into a circle, we can take that. I'm hearing some people would prefer two groups, but I think it would be nice if everyone could hear what other people have to say and the questions I have to ask.
I think we could do one group, but I think I definitely want to be able to, maybe we can put the other, do you guys have more easels? Maybe we can put the other boards over here so people can see them easier.
I have some clipboards here to help with filling out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
About retail, what kind of retail would go on there? Have you had any say about it? Because can we retail that closes down at 5, at 8? And we don't want a bar.
Right. Well, I think the biggest thing for me is so the request for proposals asked for there to be retail here, and it's obviously an appropriate spot for retail, but I don't want any retail that's going to kill any retail that already exists. So I think I would love to hear from everybody here tonight what they would like to see there. Again, I don't want to kill any retail that's already, I don't want any tenant leaving their building already in Cotati, unless it's like really run down, to move into this space. So I have heard, the only real specific thing that I've heard so far is that not necessarily a library, but maybe a space so there could be a mobile library that comes in. Right. So, and that's actually when we broke down that one retail space into 750 square feet, we're kind of thinking that might be a good size, because obviously I don't think there's the money to build a ginormous library, but a smaller space would be great for a library. Yes. Yeah.
Robin, any question for you?
Yes.
Would it be possible to have rendering perspectives of the Charles Street side and then, from his perspective as well, as far as what he's seeing, what he's looking at from his backyard, so to speak? Is that possible?
It's possible. The question is by when? So that's elevation. Yeah, yeah. We'll definitely have elevations. Renderings, we can, I don't want to overcommit HKIT. We can definitely do a rendering of the Charles Street side. I think the elevation would help Pete more than a rendering from his, it's just like, where do I take the, like, for example, where would I take the perspective from? Like, there's no way I could capture all of that in one rendering, so.
I'm already talking about landscape design, trying to bring in trees.
Yeah.
For a screen.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be very helpful to know how many trees, where should the trees?
Yeah. We can, I mean, we can talk to you about that, but just to be clear, again, the podium will have, what was the height that we were talking about, the,
Floor level, the second floor, that you're gonna have.
and a fence, so.
Trees on the whole edge.
Fence above on the podium?
Yeah, but a nice looking fence. It's not like a, yes. Because otherwise people would fall off the, Pete, this is what, Pete, what I think might help you the most is if we could find pictures like the, Paul, like the Sunnyvale or Sunnydale, sorry, parcel Q picture. That we could help show you to help you visualize what it will look like.
In other words, it's not gonna be a naked fucking podium that everyone's looking at.
Correct. We don't want him seeing people up on the podium, and we don't want people up on the podium seeing him. So do mine. Bring them over. No, I mean, we want you to have privacy. We want them to have privacy. So I think we can, short of doing a rendering, because again, I don't think we can do a rendering from your, just physically, like I'd have to do 3 renderings, not one. We'll send you the picture. You won't be, it's not something, sorry. I was suggesting, Paul, there's a project that Paul and I worked on together.
What's the name of that project?
It's called Parcel Q, but you, like I said, you wouldn't be able to, there's no publicly available picture. You're not going to find a picture of what I'm talking about on the web, online anywhere. We have pictures that Paul's taken as the architect that we can send you. You might have it on your website? Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, come over here. I'm going to turn the mic.
It's cleaned up fairly well. I'm still not done with it. You would be a lot of here for questions.
But yeah, so I just.